A very good afternoon and welcome back to Havana Media. My name is Prof. And as usual, I'm going to be your host for today. Now, it's another very beautiful day. That is Wednesday. People are planning on how they are going to see the elections in Addis Ababa. But for us here, we want to talk about something very different. We've been talking about Raila Odinga. You know, you'll watch that from other platforms and maybe some other time from this. But now in this video, in as much as we normally talk about breaking the political barriers, this one is going to be a very different one. And here I have got one of the most economists, Professor Ogola, and I want to talk about how we can fix the economy of the Republic of Kenya. Prof, what do you have to say?
Yeah, of course, the question is yours. I mean, I've come here, is like a hard talk. You ask the hard question, I'll answer you.
Now, there is this thing of how these people have been running the economy. Like you find that they say that the economy is working, but according to you now, like an economist, how have these guys been running the economy and then assuming that everything is okay?
Yeah, so first of all, let me say that since independence, these people have been running the economy like a piggy bag. You know what a piggy bag is? Mm-hmm. A piggy bag looks like something where you throw everything and anything at it from the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. Then you open at the end of the year to see what is there. So they have been running that economy with the guesswork. That's why you see someone goes to China, then they bring something. Then someone travels to the US, then they are promised this one. Someone signs everything and try to throw at the economy. And that doesn't work. Because apart from Kibaki's presidency, is when the economy was run a bit with some science. These guys are running the economy with guesswork because they just throw anything at it. But I believe economy should be run with input, process, and output. What are you bringing in? What's the process of doing it, and what's the output? Now look at the issue of affordable housing. What was the input? What should be the process of getting affordable housing? And what should be the output? Share, shift, all those things. The issue about doing the airport at Adani. The economy needs input, process, and output. And if that is not there, then economy is done as guesswork. Economy is a science, so economics should be done as a science.
Now, so talking about economy being done as a science, what is the budget deficit as a boulder for things like in economy? Mostly you are a scientist. Bring it like a scientist.
Yeah. So first of all, I said that earlier that these people have always been working around the issue of doing budget deficit. For example, the people, someone can say, we have done very well because we have breached the budget deficit. But economically, when you breach the budget deficit, actually you kill an economy. Because actually you should be growing using people's money. Like US have got a very high budget deficit, or something like 6.2% of the economy. China has something like 4.2% of the economy. While Kenya is having 3.1% of the GDP. So we are realizing that the having a lower budget deficit is not necessarily a good thing. We say in Solomonic economics that debt is an asset. So now that I've told you that they have been running the economy as let's say as a guesswork, the main question that you're trying to ask is this budget, if budget deficit is not an enemy to the economy,
then what is?
Now, the three main enemies to the economy. The first one, I call it inflation. For example, the Kenyan inflation is very high. If you compare the inflation of Kenya to you compare to the US and China, our inflation is very bad. The interest rate is very bad, and also the exchange rate is very bad. So what's the exchange rate for Kenya? We are exchanging our currency for $1 for 129.
129.
And if you go now to the Chinese yen, it is doing at something like 17.9% per yen. So if you come to inflation rate, our inflation is 5.1%. China is doing 0.2%. Can you imagine? While the US is doing 2.9%. And then you find that the interest rates, our interest rate, if you want to borrow money, the average, some people are saying it's 24%, but it is just let's say around 18%. If you go to the China, it's around 3.1%, if you like, the interest rate. And if you go to the US, it is around 4.2%. Meaning the cost of capital is lower in the US and in China but also in Singapore, but also in Japan, but also in Korea. And that's why economies develop, because if you can borrow money at a high interest rate, means that the cost of goods and services that you can be able to produce are very expensive. And therefore you cannot compete against other economies. So the biggest enemies to the Kenyan economy is, I said, interest rate, inflation, and the exchange rate.
So, okay, so I wanted to try to explain it. I wanted to try to explain for me something here, and even the people that will be watching or are watching. If the economy of Kenya is like, I don't know how to put it. Now, they are trying to compare the economy of Kenya with the economy of China and the United States.
Yeah.
And then you find that now the way we spend on our taxation. The other time we talked about the 0. I don't know, was it 0.25 in China, and then something different. Now you find that in Kenya we have our inflation is very high compared to those other parts of the country.
Yeah. So now the question we should ask: what is Kenyans? Before you do that, what we have to understand: what is Kenya's economic problem? The Kenyan economic problem are only two. Actually, let me not say two, they are twofold. Because they are twofold because you have to manage them at the same time. You can't manage one, then the other. The first economic problem for Kenya is that we are spending a lot of money in servicing debt. There is a time when the government said, whether they are honest or not, but they say that we are spending, for every 1 shilling we collect, we are spending 70 cents in servicing debt. That's very high, if at all that number is correct. The second problem that we are talking about here is that there is low economic activity. Have you heard women telling you there's no money moving?
Yeah.
Have you heard people saying that there's no money?
There's no money.
There's work, but there's no money. You can work. People work. Everybody is not being paid. Pending bills are there. Wages are there. So money is not moving. So these two are very big problems to solve. So now, these twofold problems, the question is, how can you reduce the amount of money used for servicing debt at the same time spur economic activity? Because these things, if you joke with them, does not work. For example, when the president discovered that we have a lot of money we need required to service debt, what did he do? He increased taxation. Now, when you increase taxation, you reduce economic activity. Because no one wants to buy anything if their prices go up. No one goes for holiday. The other time I was talking to my friends, they told me they were in. Nowadays, sometimes go to a hotel, you find that you are yourself with just 1 or 2 waiters, isn't it? Of course, some hotels are enjoying, but others are not enjoying. So there is low economic activity at the same time. Money is being used to service debt. So how should you fix this? That's the main question that we should be saying.
Before you answer that, Prof, now talking about the president deciding now to raise tax, thinking that now when you raise, he was thinking that maybe when you raise tax, you find that you'll collect too much.
Yeah, he wanted to raise taxes so that he can collect more, so that he can service the debt and remain with the surplus to spend the economy.
Was it wise? Because
no, it is un-Solomonic. Because I told you that they are twofold, meaning that it's two sides of a coin. You must fix the coin at the same time. It's like you find me when I have a heart disease, I have a kidney disease. And also have a health disease. You cannot tell me that you'll ignore any of them. There's a way you have to manage these three at the same time when I'm alive. Because if you take out my heart, I die. If you take out my kidney, also you kill me. But if you take out my head, my brain is there. So how do you fix these things at the same time without compromising the other one? That's the main thing. So when you raise taxes, immediately what happens, he lowered the economic activity in the country. When you lower the economic activity in the country, people suffer from inflation. The high interest rates come in. The spending power of the Kenya shillings goes down. Therefore, the exchange rate goes up. So you are actually reviving the three enemies of the economy. It's like resurrecting the demons. So that was a mistake. At the same time, you have been seeing that we are seeing less collection from tax income. Tax income means that if you read people's payslip, you'll have less people getting jobs. Less job creation will take place. There will be job losses. And when there's job losses and no jobs are being created, it's definite that tax income will go down because no one wants to employ anybody when there's high taxation. So raising taxes lowers economic activity, and again now compromises your capacity to repay the loans. And as loans continue piling up, it does not work. Secondly, when you raise taxes, then there's low power, the Kenya shillings. Then we have that the Kenya shillings is not very powerful. The exchange rate goes up. Then the exchange rate going up increases your cost of reservicing a debt. Then the loan stock goes up. It's just like, this is, I'm telling you that they do it as a piggyback, guesswork, but it's science. So what I'm trying to say here is that to solve this problem, it's twofold. You have low economic activity. At the same time, you have a lot of money being spent on resurfacing the debt. This is the time to do what I call economic stimulus. Economic stimulus will solve the two problems. So if you ask me, what the president needs to do is to do this. And if I would be a president anytime now, I would simply do this. I will increase stimulus in the economy. And how do you do that? Let me just show you the numbers. I can offer free healthcare and free education at this time. I'm sure you're going to ask me how to do that, but I'll answer you later. I'll offer free healthcare and free education this time. Let me use the education numbers to tell you how this works out. And let's just go to numbers. I have some more numbers. That's why today I'm having my iPad like you. Currently, Kenya has 12,143,913 households to be exact. Isn't it? Kenya has what? 12,143,913 households. And then we are talking about the average household has 3.9 persons per household.
3.9.
Yes, economic sense.
That is almost, let's just say 4.
4, isn't it? But we don't round off because the figures are very high. Because if there's 1 million, it's a 12 million. If you round off, already you can actually have 12 million people added on top of the population. And that's people complain, like you see the population counting in Garissa is creating a problem. So Kenyan's household spend 68,702 shillings per child in education average. Isn't it? Then using statistics of 2022, we have 3.4 children per household. This data, they have it. I don't know why they don't use it. Therefore, each household expenditure in education is 3.4 times 68,702, which gives us a total of 233,586.80. That is the total expenditure of education per household. Isn't it? So the total expenditure in education in each household in Kenya in general now, you just take the 233,586,80 times 12,143,913, and that gives you exact figure, which is 2.8 trillion shillings being spent in education in the whole country. That is secondary and primary. Isn't it? With precision. You can. So this is what I call stimulus. So the 2.84 trillion is the economic stimulus. Now, if you give free primary education, this money which could have been spent by households in education, they start spending it elsewhere. And that's what I call economic activity. Now, I'm sure you pay school fees somewhere to somebody. If that school fees is free, you'll buy for that child a laptop. Isn't it? You'll buy them a shirt. Isn't it? So let's just go one by one. So you realize that by offering free and secondary education, government injects, it's like injecting 2.84 trillion to the economy. So instead of Kenyans investing this money in education, they're going to buy things like, I could call them clothes, housing, isn't it? Electronics. Some will buy milk. Those who used to take milk without tea, they'll now milk without tea without milk. They'll take milk. Sugar. Some of them will take bread now. Some of them will now eat vegetables. No, sometimes when it is hard, unanunua omena na ugali na unakula peke yake. Kesho unakula ugali na sukuma peke yake. Lakini kama kuna pesa, you'll take ugali na sukuma and omena at the same time. Isn't it? Yeah, you know some houses, but you don't know, bwana. When you grow up in Kibera, you cannot have somebody ati unakula nyama na pia tena kuna mboga, alafu tena kuna ugali. You take two things, bwana. Ugali na nyama, ugali na mboga, ugali na omena, ugali na obambo, like that. But you see now, when there's more money, if you're not paying school fees, you'll buy clothes for your children. Yeah. Isn't it? So this is what I'm trying to say about increasing economic activity that now will take place. So when this economic activity takes place, what will happen is that you lower the risk of the economy. Because when banks know collecting money is hard, they price highly risks. And therefore the interest rate goes up, isn't it? When also you lower this, you create economic activities, you create more jobs. Because now somebody can add an employee in a workplace because revenues are going up for each and every organization and every company, isn't it? So investing in education will lower also inflation. Because now the money you could have put in education, you can now buy fuel with it, isn't it? And then people can travel and life can be good. So in this way, inflation can be reduced by reducing also government expenditure. This government called broad-based government is too heavy, isn't it? Yeah. When the government spends so much, there's always inflation because government's a very poor spender. They spend very inefficiently. Like, do you know what's happening? When you want to buy a cup like this, you'll have to do procurement, isn't it? Yeah. Government can spend 200,000 shillings to procure things for 80,000. For 80,000, yeah. Because procurement process is tedious, isn't it? So because of that now, if government lowers their expenditure, you go and increase household expenditure. When you increase household expenditure, then there's always more economic activity. Because, for example, government expenditure can be you go to China, you buy something, you bring. You go buy something from India. But that does not necessarily increase household consumption. And then you do serious things. So what I'm trying to say here is that when you reduce government expenditure, you have to increase household expenditure by reducing the cost of commodities through lowering taxes. Isn't it? This way you'll spur economic activity. So I'm talking about that we also have to go to production economy. That's the second thing. What I mean by production economy is that when you lower taxes, you give incentives for people to produce. And in Solomonic economics, we are talking more about what you call the focusing on the supply side of the economy. What do I mean by supply side of the economy? Supply side of the economy means that we have to begin manufacturing, isn't it? So when you do this manufacturing, you are able to allow money to be made by Kenyans in Kenya working in different farms. Like, for example, you go to Narok, the Narok area, the Mar community that produces wheat, isn't it? When the government imports wheat, instead of incentivizing wheat production in Kenya so that these people can sell their wheat to the local people who do the grounding of wheat and make wheat flour, then now you are killing those people. So Kenya Kwanza government is doing more of demand side, isn't it? Yeah. Ignoring the supply side of the economy. Remember, supply side of the economy also increases the number of goods and services of the economy and lowers inflation. Do you know why there's always inflation? Inflation means there's more money than goods to be bought. Like to say me, in your village, if there's only one woman in the village, do you know how men can sweat?
A lot of men. People can fight.
Yeah, so that's inflation. That's inflation. When there's more demand than supply, we have inflation. So the best way to reduce inflation is to produce. So when you produce, for example, if you go to Tana River, everybody does mangoes, isn't it? There's no inflation there, isn't it? Because the supply is higher than demand, isn't it? But when you come to my area, people can even buy rotten avocados because there's none. So somebody can even anatoa hizo place rotten to eat the small one.
The small one, yeah.
But the supply of avocado in UK is so high that any avocado that there's suspicion that could be rotten, they throw away. So supply and demand forces are managed well. So in short, what I'm trying to say here is that when you improve when you bring the supply side of the economy, you can do very well. So how do you do that? Tax breaks. I want to say tax breaks for business investing in new equipment. For example, sugar production. Somebody want to bring a plant for producing sugar. Somebody want to bring a plant for producing milk, isn't it? Somebody want to bring a plant for producing rice, for example, in Moya Tabere, isn't it? infrastructure spending to improve logistics. For example, if you do good roads, then people who are doing transport from Mombasa to Kampala to Malava to several parts, they find it easy. The tires, the wear and tear is also very low. And also it takes short period of time to use the asset to reach the destination. But if the roads are very bad, Mombasa to Malava might take 4 days. A journey that should take a day, 1 day, if not just slightly more. So you see, those are important. Then again, you have to do what you call deregulation, where there's too much bureaucracies and regulation removed. Then you have to do some subsidies to some targeted industries such as food production, skill development. For example, you can allow, if there's a university that is training people, they can get incentives to train healthcare workers, you can train engineers, you can train teachers, you can do a lot of training. The basic thing I'm talking about this incentive is that what you are trying to achieve, in short, like going to train people in your Kali industry to do, for example, household items like chairs, tables,
panel beating and all
panel
that.
beating, producing sofarias, jikos and forks. But for us here, we import forks and spoons from China. Instead of going here to your Kali industry to produce for us forks and spoons. So I'm saying those are the, you may underestimate that, but you know what? There is no house in Kenya that has no spoon. So let's say, I've just told you, we have 12,461,000 households, isn't it? Now, if every household has 10 spoons, isn't it? How many spoons can be sold in Kenya?
Lots of them. Lots of them.
So I think in your house, I'm sure, how many spoons do you have?
I have the dozen one.
The dozen one, the set one.
Yeah, the set one.
So that if you have 20 guests, they can eat without a problem. So imagine 20, each household are having an average of 10 spoons each, isn't it? Time this one is like 120 million spoons. If you give people in your Kali sector to produce those spoons and put in shelves so that people can buy in supermarkets, you are going to have how many people working?
You are going to employ a lot of people.
And then you don't have to use your dollars to import spoons from China.
Because you already have yours that is being made in the country.
Yes. And then you are going to use the raw materials here. There'll be less scrap metals everywhere, scratching people's legs.
So in other words, you'll be creating jobs even for everybody. Like the people that are bringing materials. And
So with all these things, you are going to reduce inflation. Just like China has managed their inflation to 0.8%. For us, we are doing what we call 5.1%. So with the production going up, you shall solve the problem of trade balance, which is always the issue whereby there's more imports than what? Exports. And this will in turn reduce the exchange rate. When you don't have to import a lot, because exchange rate affects us at the point of export and then at the point of paying debt, isn't it? So if also you are borrowing less, because you are creating capital within the country, also you lower those things. So what I'm trying to say in short, that these things can be run scientifically, there should be no guesswork. So with the low interest rate, low inflation, and a low exchange rate, the cost of fuel can go down to 80 shillings per litre. And when that happens, you will spur a lot of economic activity. Now you see the manufacturing industry will have low cost of energy because the operating cost is very high. So this is what I call the outcome of the supply side of the economy. Is as opposed to demand side. Apart from the fact that demand side of the economy does not help economic activity, it's also susceptible to corruption. Do you know why politicians like importing things? Because you go to someone in China and tell them, if I give you to, for example, now they have imported 14 million bags of fertilizer, isn't it? Now, you tell somebody in China and ask them, what are you giving me? That's what they like. So they run to demand side, not the supply side. But you cannot go to a girl Marakwet and start negotiating with farmers how many bags of cement, of let's say, maize they'll give you if you give them a tender at NCP. Isn't it? So you see, they like where that's what we talk about G2G. There was a scandal of G2G oil, G2G edible oil, G2G fuel. They like those G2G where they go and pretend they are signing bilateral, but actually they are signing personal business deals. So that's what I'm trying to tell you, that in the supply side of the economy, we have value adders, not brokers, isn't it? And not traders, and not imposters, isn't it? We have people who are doing value addition, and this should be more put in the side of the private sector and private sector. Because when private sector thrives, employers thrive. When employers thrive, they create more employment.
Right.
With more employment and a thriving private sector, normally what happens is that more taxes are collected and there's lower taxes, isn't it? And there's less taxes. Less taxes, lower taxes produces more taxes. Because everyone is coming to work and everyone is producing, rather than having a few people carrying the whole burden for the country. So supply side economy is Solomonic because because consumers will benefit from the greater supply of goods and services. Like I told you, when there's more goods and services, you have very low inflation. China produces almost everything. That's why the inflation is 0.2%. You cannot lower inflation significantly if you are relying on imported goods like we are doing when there's a balance of trade. So the aggregate demand and aggregate supply is higher than demand. You see, aggregate means, for example, you saw when Arsenal played in Newcastle in this called the Carabao Cup, isn't it? In Emirates, it was 2-0 against Arsenal. And then in Newcastle Stadium, it was 2-0 again. So aggregate was 4-0. So aggregate means that the side of supply has scored more goal than the side of demand. So by aggregate, we need to have more supply than demand. So then we can have a surplus to export. Then we can earn an extra dollar from exportation. When you do more exports, what happens? You have less challenges with exchange, isn't it? Exchange rates. You have less challenges with the balance of trade, and you have less exchange with borrowing because then you can actually pay. So this side of the economy of the supply side, we call it Solomonic theory. It's very Solomonic because it brings a lot of things. It's the opposite. You know, when you do a supply side, you give tax breaks to the rich people. The rich people are able to create business because they can save more and invest more. Then they create jobs. Then there's a trickle down in the economy. It's the opposite what Ruto talked about, the bottom-up economic model. Because actually that model doesn't exist. I've not seen a book that was published with the topic called bottom-up economic model. There's no but I've seen Solomonic ones. I've seen the bottom of the pyramid. These are not bottom-up economic model. So what I'm trying to say is that I forgive so many companies. When I do study plan, I see some company quoting a chapter, bottom-up economic agenda. I'm like, what the hell? But anyway, I forgive them because we say that, Father, forgive them because they do not know what they're doing. So let me end by saying that the three pillars of the supply side of the economy is 1, tax policies, 2, regulatory policies, and 3, monetary policies. What's a tax policy? You see what the guy has been doing? Taxing, finance bill. That is playing with the tax policy. Regulatory policies are the tax regulation and procedures. Like them telling you should declare your revenue before you collect it, isn't it? And then monetary policies, how you manage the money. Like now, where do you allocate your money? Do you allocate money at the bottom or you put them on the top? Do you give money to the private sector or you give money to the public sector? Does the public sector want to do business or you want private sector to do business? According to me, you should allow the private sector to do business. Government should create an enabling environment. Government needs to be functional to allow everybody feel safe. Instead of focusing on G2G oil importation, they should offer good security so that investors can feel Kenya is safe. They should be able to offer good infrastructure to enable this. They should put money on training and capacity building for people. Then this private sector, there are a lot of jobs for them. They should put money on research and development. Like, for example, an academic in Uzima. If they give us money to do some research about how to change healthcare, those could be beneficial than them being concerned about the issue of, let's say, importing goods on our behalf. That one they should allow a private sector to do. So these things allows money to be in circulation. So the bottom line is that the core part of supply side is that production of goods and services should be more than demand, determining both economic growth and economic development. So Kenya needs to go and focus on supply side of the economics. In fact, if I would ever one day get a chance to run this country, we'll focus on supply side of the economy. There's less corruption there, I told you. It increases to bring surplus. You can earn foreign exchange with it, isn't it? It can lower your exchange challenges. It can solve the interest rate problem. And also it can kill inflation. And also we have to cut government expenditure. You have to run a government that is lean and clean.
Yeah. Wow. Now, okay, Prof, just in 1 minute,
Yeah.
I just wanted to cover up everything that you've said. Now,
Yeah.
what, according to you, what do you think the government is supposed to do to make sure that the economy is running smooth and everybody is okay?
First of all, the government has to fix the so-called incompetence in government. Because when I listen to these guys in the economics, they don't know how to run the economy. Clearly speaking. There are questions they want to asking me here. If you ask them, they might not be able to answer you. And they can't answer with numbers. No, for me, I'm telling you with numbers, and formulas. You cannot do guesswork in the economy. So that's the first thing. For example, if I was the president, in the treasury, I would only put the qualified. Whether you didn't support, even if you voted against me when I'm watching, you are the one. In fact, you see, for example, Abraham Lincoln brought the team of rivals to run his government because he wanted to succeed because he had so many rivals. So if he didn't bring competent team, it works. So first of all, they have to bring competent people. I'm telling you, people say so many things, Boniface. I've heard you saying, mostly people suffer from serious incompetence. And I've seen this not just from government, very many people. Professor, I've been looking for a job, help me. I tell them, send me a CV. Some people don't even know how to arrange a CV. No. We one day will come here with you live and tell young people to send our CV. Then we start analyzing CV by CV. You discover there's a serious problem. Like somebody, for example, let me give an example. At the first part of a CV, when a CEO like you or me sees a CV, you want to see this person's latest job, isn't it? But here you find most young people, the first one is talking about a job he was doing in 2012, isn't it? The latest job is in the middle, isn't it?
He's mixing.
And he's making, so, these people who employers don't have time, isn't it? Let's say sometimes we have 20,000 applications. How do you have time to start looking for where is this man's latest job, isn't it? So I'm telling you, incompetence is a big problem. Let's accept it. So the president has just to bring competent people. Kabogo will never help him in ICT. Mbadi is not the solution to treasury, isn't it? Justin Muturi is not helping the public service, which is the fulcrum of government delivery services. It won't work, isn't it? Joho will not fix mining, isn't it? Those are truths. They're tested and tried. Tell me one thing he's done. So after that, we have to use the economic model. I've told you. We have to focus on the supply side of the economy, isn't it? And then go after the enemy of Kenya, economy. The Kenyan economy enemy is not the Gen Z with posting things on social media. The enemy of the Kenyan economy, I said, 1, inflation, 2, high interest rate, 3, high exchange rate. If you fix those ones with the formula I've given him, it's good to go. Last but not least, this looks like just a small piece of wisdom. The president needs to be generous. The president needs to be
generous.
What do I mean by that? Generous does not mean going to church to donate money to church. Generous does not mean on top of the car promising 20 roads. Generous means the president needs to know that when the citizens of Kenya have money in their pocket, he will be a rich president. I've never seen an economy which is made up of poor citizens.
Yeah, that's right.
Show me a poor citizen and I'll show you a rich nation. The per capita income for South Africa is higher than ours, isn't it? It's $7,000, for us it's $2,000 here, isn't it? So we are suffering as economy. What I'm trying to say, generous means here is that let the money be in the hands of Kenyans.
Let it flow.
Lower the taxes, isn't it? Create economic activity. Let Kenyans be at work. Let them get income and the rest. Don't compete with Kenyan businesses. Don't be a business yourself. Stop giving foreigners jobs. Gives Kenyans. The next time we shall hear about, we shall be discussing about how to manage the circular economy. In short, if there's a core of the economy, let's say, for example, affordable housing, get a Kenyan to do the affordable housing. Then get a Kenyan bank to finance the affordable housing. Then get a Kenyan to be a supplier of everything there. Not bring for me a foreigner to be the one doing everything. Like you see when they were doing these roads here, the roads they were doing here like expressway. The Chinese took over
everything.
Supply of ballast.
Supply of ballast.
Yes. Now, what were they doing? They take a Kenyan to subcontract to them to find where ballast is. Use the Kenyan trucks to bring ballast to expressway. And then the Chinese were paying a Kenyan. How would I do that as a head of state? No, you know, the contractor makes more margins than the subcontractor. You are being squeezed like a subcontractor until you can see blood, isn't it? Then the money is repatriated to China. No. We need these people to love their country.
That's right.
And I can tell you, Bon, in short, it's all about love. It's about love. Do you love your country? Do you love your citizens? Do you love this economy? Do you love this country? So in the decision the president is making, count them one by one and tell me whether there's love. That's all. You know, it's all about love. You know, when God said, when Jesus said, love one another as you love
yourself.
That's all. That's not. If you ask me, economy is about love. Yeah. It's like I've told you these figures here. You're just about love. You are happy when somebody has. But these people want us to be poor so that we beg. Isn't it? Like, do you think the MP in your area wants you to be rich? Because the minute you make money, you'll be contesting the MP. So does he want you to be rich?
No.
You
can't allow it.
That's the truth. So it's all about love. Seeing people around you thrive, even if you don't thrive yourself.
Wow, that is a very good insight about economy. And I think we can be doing this more and more.
No, economy is
economy is the because it's the backbone of a developed country.
Yes.
Now, as we wind up this session, I would like to say something that the problem that we have in this country is that we have leaders who are politicians. But suppose we had got leaders who are not politicians, who don't do politics whenever they are in offices, then I think we can be in the right direction and our country can be in a better position to depend on itself. Because the other time you had the former President Uhuru Kenyatta saying that there is no way you can complain about the United States of America and President Donald Trump cutting some supplies, cutting some support in Kenya to these African countries, yet they cannot depend on themselves. Until we meet again in the next video, if possible, I've been your host, Prof. Bye-bye.